So what are we going to talk about here tonight? How to manage a home when your schedule, family, and life are busy and unpredictable. Now, I'm going to assume that maybe you have some other people that are there in the home with you. You've got to manage that. And in particular, at this period of time, you've got to manage it and you've got to get work done. In some cases, you've got to get work done and operate a business. In some cases, your business is at home. And regardless of what it is, being productive at home is one of those things that can get away from you if you don't get the house management part right. I'm assuming that you know how to work at home. I'm going to touch on some resources again here at the end, but I want to talk to you specifically about how to manage the house. And this is going to be a little different, and it's going to be something that, again, maybe you thought about, maybe you didn't. So we're going to talk here, 5 things that make home management possible. And quite frankly, most days, home management is impossible because you've got lots of different schedules. You've got a varying work schedule, and then you've got everybody else's schedule that kind of manages. And depending on how old the people are at your house, when you've got 5, 6, 2, 3, 4 different schedules, and everybody's got to manage it, and you got to do it in a way that you get work done, but you still got responsibilities to those other people, you need to have some kind of operating systems in place. And we're going to be talking about 5 of those things that you can put into place so that you can get those systems operating. At least you can think through how to put together a system. And so basically the following document, this is going to be extracted from hundreds of years of practical wisdom in home management. And that's not to say that I've had hundreds of years. It's the fact that I've had that experience given to me by people who had those hundreds of years. So this is why I'm going to pass this on to you. And they're basically going to be, now I said 5, they're going to be 4 aspects of home management you can employ in order to bring structure to a non-structured, unpredictable environment. Right? There are 4 aspects of home management. We're going to touch on 5 different things, but we're going to talk about 4 different aspects. These 4 things are going to be, number 1, menu planning. Number 2, once a month cooking. Number 3, soliciting assistance. Number 4, visible whiteboard. Number 5, publishing the schedule. Right? And these are 4 systems that you can operate. Now, again, you're going to veer off on these things. You're going to vary these things. You're going to bring these things into your home, your own routine in different ways, or these things are going to cause you to think differently about some of the things that you're doing. You may not adopt them wholeheartedly. However, let's go through them so that you can get a sense for some things that you can be doing. Now, all together, right, they form a system. And so one of the things that you'll find out is that the more of these things that you can operate in concert with each other, the better you're going to be able to manage the home, and more predictable that you can make your home run, the better you're going to be able to get work done, right? Because if you can't predict what's going to happen from day to day, I can tell you, some of you are authors, some of you are content creators, some of you are product creators. And if you can't predict what your house is going to be tomorrow, I guarantee you will get to the end of that day and still have more to do than you've got time to do it. And so you don't want to have a lot of days like that, especially when your income depends on you being able to produce on a regular basis. So you got to be able to do something to introduce some predictability to your schedule. Now, this is going to allow you to leverage these systems and your time, and ultimately, leverage these things in a way that's going to help you to be able to get more done. And the people that you're working with, the people who are in your home, specifically if you have children, and it really doesn't matter how old the children are, whatever you're doing, you are trying to operate so that they can operate independently. So if you've got a 7-year-old at home, what you're trying to do is to get them to operate independently. If you have a 17-year-old at home, you are trying to get them to operate independently. In some cases, right now, you may have college students in your house. Your job is still the same. You are trying to get them to operate independently. If you have, in some cases, you may have an aging parent at your house. One of the things that you are going to find out is that giving them autonomy and helping them to act independently not only helps them to operate, but it helps you better also. And so everyone in your home where you've got to manage their comings and their goings, and you've got to manage their systems, You are trying to get them to operate independently so that they do not need you for every little thing. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about children just for a second. The earlier you start these things, the easier they're going to become when they get older. Like, if you don't start these things early on with children, I can almost guarantee you, if you try to start them when they're teenagers or you try to start them when they're young adults, they're going to kind of push back against you. And it's going to be difficult to implement systems at that point. So again, if you've got children right now in your home and they're young, try to start implementing these things. You can start these things I'm going to be talking about to some degree with a 2-year-old. It really does not matter. And so what they don't know and what they won't know is that what you're doing isn't normal, right? Everything you're going to be doing, that young kids, they have no idea that everybody else doesn't do these things. They have no idea of that. And so they'll just start to process this stuff as normal. Well, this is just what we do at our house. And so that's what you want to do with these systems. You want to put them in place, not only so that you can help them to get toward independence, but so that when they experience them, they just think, hey, this is the way homes run. When they go to other places, they'll say, well, wait a minute. Why aren't you doing these things? This is what we do at home. So this is basically, again, if you have children, young children, the younger you have them, the more you want to implement these things. But regardless, I don't care how old your children are, even if they are in college, even if they're out of college, you need to have these systems to manage your home. Right now, the other thing you've got to be willing to do is to stay the course. Everything in you will cry out that this is not worth the fight. It's not worth the struggle. It's not worth the work. Everything would be a lot better if I just backed off of these things. I can tell you that if you will stay the course, you will reap the benefits. Now, the other thing is this. It is impossible to manage schedules predictably if you do not have systems. It's impossible. And so what you can do, right, is you can hold individuals accountable to manage themselves. Right? With every system you have, you're not going to be able to manage a schedule. You can hold individuals accountable to manage themselves. That's basically what you're doing with a system. And again, I don't care if the child is 7. I don't care if you've got an aging adult who's 67 or who's 77 or who's 87. You are trying to hold individuals accountable to manage themselves. If you can get that into your brain, you will understand the rest of the systems I'm going to be explaining to you. If you can do all of these things predictably, right? If you can flick up all 5 of the light switches that I'm going to be telling you about, and you have them all on at the same time, everything's going to run better. If you flick up one light switch, right? One of the things I'm going to be telling you is maybe you flick up a second one. It's not going to work as well as you have all of the light switches flicked up at the same time. Let's talk about the first thing, menu planning, right? Menu planning. This will throw a house into chaos faster than any one thing, over and above all the other things we're going to be explaining to you. One of the most unanticipated expenses and time cleaner is what is done day to day for meals, right? Because and the fact of the matter is this: I don't care who you are, it's really unsustainable, and it doesn't make sense to eat out every day in terms of time and cost, right? And typically, the only reason you eat out a lot is not because you're just flippant and you just like to eat out. I mean, maybe that's where you are, but most people are not like that. It's typically because they don't have time. They're really busy, or you've got something to do. You've got a call, or you've got somebody that's got to be someplace, or you can't get quiet. And all of a sudden, mealtime is there. Everybody's got to eat. You got to see to it. And the easiest thing to do is to order in, or the easiest thing to do is to go out to eat. And that is unsustainable. It doesn't make sense to do. And so what you've got to do is you've got to get this under control in some kind of system. At the same time, you know what? Sometimes it's not going to be feasible to shop once a day. So, trying to go to, or even if you order in every day, right? Even if you have groceries delivered every day, all of these things take time to do and to manage. It is unsustainable to walk through this process every single day. It's difficult if you have people in your house to get buy-in on what exactly should be the meal from day to day. Right. So try to get buy-in on any one thing. And it's almost some days, like pulling teeth. Everybody sort of wants something different. I mean, yeah. I mean, typically, depending on how much autonomy you give everyone, you can just say, hey, you know what, everybody, this is what we're eating today, and everybody will kind of go along with it. However, you kind of want to get some buy-in. You kind of want to make sure that people have what they like, because sometimes, what will happen is you'll get everybody to say, hey, you know what, that's fine. That's fine, Dad. That's fine, Mom. That's fine, Uncle. We're willing to eat that. And then you'll just have a lot of wasted food sitting around. That's not what you want. Again, that's almost as bad as going out to eat all the time. The way through this, and here's the thing, one of the things that you can do in order to get this under control is to start planning menus 4 to 6 weeks at a time, and to do it in advance. Before you dismiss this, let me explain this to you. And I want you to envision this before you dismiss it. And before you think that you can't do it, this is more doable than going out to eat every day once you understand the system. Advanced menu planning basically means that you're going to be forced to get ingredients in advance. It's going to be forced that you're going to limit the number of trips you got to make in order to get those ingredients, or even to order them in on some kind of grocery delivery service. Advanced menu planning means that it's going to happen in a system. It also means you're going to have to assess what you've got. And again, you're going to have to do that in advance, so you don't have to go get it at the last minute, or you don't have to order it at the last minute. It can be argued, you can work around this by just getting the grocery delivery system. But all of these services have minimums on how little you can order. So in other words, there's one grocery system that the minimum amount you can order is $35. Now, if you're just going to do that every time you think you need something, you're going to spend a lot more money. And trust me, again, this gets out of control too. There's no need for that. If you combine a delivery system with advanced menu planning, however, this is how you properly use your time. Now, what you've got to do in the menu planning system in order to make it work is to get the buy-in in the planning process. So when you are laying out what the meals are, when you are laying out what the meals are going to be, what you're doing is getting buy-in. You were sitting down at a time 4 to 6 weeks in advance, and you were planning all of these meals saying, hey, this is what everybody likes. This is what everybody wants. We're going to do this one on a Monday. We're going to do this one on a Wednesday. We're going to hold out we're going to go out on this day. All of these things are part of the planning process. And what you're doing is you're going to eliminate those things that the individuals that you're planning are not going to eat. Right? There's no need for that. Now, again, maybe you're teaching something, to a kid, or you're trying to just implement some kind of discipline. That's fine. I mean, over and above that, I'm not talking about disciplinary situations, or even if you're trying to coach people. What I'm saying to you is that don't put things in the menu that you can't get buy-in on, because you're going to waste food. There's no need for that. Get the buy-in up front. What that avoids is getting to the day and saying, well, man, that was great. I don't think I want that. I don't think I want to eat that, which again, just causes a lot of chaos and a lot of problems. What you can do is you're going to plan out the assistance of people, according to the meals you're going to be able to prepare, right? So not only are you thinking about what people are going to want to eat, you're also thinking about the help you're going to have. We're going to be talking about that here in a minute. You're talking about the help you're going to have. Listen, if you have people in your house and they're able-bodied, I don't care if you're managing an aging parent, if you are managing a teenager, if you are managing a pre-teenager, everybody can assist with the meal planning, and everybody can assist with the cooking. And you need to factor that in to your planning. Again, this takes time, but it's going to save you time on the back end. Now, this also minimizes the actual food preparation time. It increases the independence of the individuals that are assisting. Right? Every time you get your son, your nephew, your daughter, your niece involved in the preparation, involved in the planning, what you're doing is setting them apart for independence. Every time you get your aging parent involved in the planning, every time you get them involved in the preparation, every time you get them involved in putting everything together, what you're doing is you are setting them apart for independence in your home to operate that way. Now, what you're going to have to do, you may have to use some kind of spreadsheet application. I don't want to get into the specifics of that. I mean, you know what you can use, right? You know what everybody can pay attention to. You can do this with paper and pencil, right? It's perfectly acceptable. Print out the paper, right? Get a pencil. Amazing how these low-tech tools work every time. You don't have to have power for that. You don't have to have anything to make a paper and pencil work. Keep it simple if possible. If you want to go up and do spreadsheets and Google Docs and all that stuff, you can do it. What you got to do is you got to keep a record of what you have in the past, right? That's why you have this stuff. So when you go back, you try to figure out, well, what did we do last month? I'm going to go back and take a look at the menu that we did. What did we do 2 months ago? I'm going to go back and take a look at what we did, right? And so basically what you've got is you've got a record of what you've done so that you can make it all happen. Now, this is going to be something that's going to be a little different. Now, it's not something that you've got to do to make this work. Once a month cooking is a way of putting this all together. It's something that not everyone does at every point in time, but it is something that you can do. One way to get more time and more assistance is to cook on 1 or 2 days during the course of the month. So in other words, maybe you can't get everybody with a busy schedule in order to help you with the preparation on one day, on all the days during the week, but you can get them if you got a weekend. And so basically what you're doing is you're going to say, you know what, at the first weekend of every month, we're going to get everything together and we're going to do everything. We're going to do all the preparation from Friday to Sunday, right? First week of the month, second week of the month, whatever the case is. Because guess what? It's easier to get everybody involved on 2 or 3 days than it is trying to get them involved every week. And so you can do this part of it if you can't get everybody else. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to schedule their assistance. That's why you do once a month cooking. You get the assistance that you need. In order to do this kind of activity, what you're going to need, you're going to have to be able to store stuff. So, you're going to have to be able to freeze things and to put things away. You're going to have something to vacuum seal the stuff. But again, it's going to be worth your time and it's going to be worth the money, even if you've got to invest in a little extra storage capacity. Even if you've got to invest in a vacuum sealer, it's going to be worth the time and productivity it's going to save you in order to get the time back. And ultimately, if you're running a business from home, I guarantee you're going to be more profitable. Now, naturally, I can't guarantee anything, but I promise you what will happen is you will have a mind clear in order to do work when you need to do it. You've got to be able to make sure that you've got the resources that you can go out and shop once a month. Now, once you get on a system, once you buy for a once a month plan and you do it the first time, that's typically the only time that you're going to have a big bite because because when you go back and do it again, you're not going to be spending money going back to the store in order to get more stuff. Right. So the first time is going to be the hardest, maybe the hardest time financially. You got to have the wherewithal to do it. But that's only going to be the only time because you're not going to have to go back until to the end of the month. All this, when you put this together with advanced menu planning, it's going to give you more time to work at home. It's going to give you more predictability to work at home. That is what you're trying to do. So this really seems like overkill. It will not when you're trying to predict a schedule. Think about this. Think about if all you had to do was to cook 1 weekend a month or you had to get assistance once a month. What could you do in terms of work at your home? Right? If all you had to do were dishes almost 1 or 2 days a month, right? Basically, and you were able to get assistance to do that, what would your work life look like? And so this is why you've got to sort of think about, well, you know what, this might seem like overkill, but maybe it isn't. Now that brings me to the point of soliciting assistance, right? Soliciting assistance from kids and other family members. Now, instead of creating games and artificial activities for your children, you can have them assisting in all the running of your business. So whatever you're doing, right? If you're a digital product creator, if you're a Kindle author, if you sell stuff on Amazon, if you sell stuff on eBay, your kids or anybody in your house, everybody in your house should be involved in the running of that business. Everybody needs to have a role. And again, I'm not saying make up busy work. Everybody needs to have a role, right? If everybody is involved in the benefits, it's not just your business. It's not dad's business. It's not mom's business. It's not uncle's business. It's not granddad's business. It's our business. You've got to get them involved. That's your job, right? If you're teaching people to move toward independence, and look, I'm not saying that you got to give them money for everything, right? Because sometimes you got a startup. Everybody can't get paid $1 million and they get started. But look, everybody needs to be involved in the running of the business. Everybody needs to be involved in the management of the home. Everybody needs to be involved in the supervision of the individuals in your home. Guess what? If you've got an aging parent, right, they can supervise some kids, especially if you've got systems where they're doing work. Now, if you've got people supervising and they're just kind of playing around and kind of doing stuff that all the other kids do, then, you might not even need any supervision for that. But if you've got systems running and kids are, operating your business, they're operating your house, you need supervision. You can't do all the supervision. And so, sometimes you're going to have the oldest kid to do some supervision. Sometimes you're going to have the aging parent do some supervision. But basically, everybody in your house needs to have a role and a job in the operation, supervision, so that you're moving people toward independence. Right? Now, whether the other individuals are children or parents, their participation is good for them in the development of their own self-esteem. This is an important point. A lot of people are looking for areas in order to develop, in order to talk self-esteem into people. There is no better self-esteem than somebody seeing a job they did and to hear good job and to actually have them know they did a good job. Right? Work is almost the best alternative in order to give someone self-esteem. It's actually built into people in the way that they are. If you can build in work, them seeing a job, and again, it really does not matter how old the individual is. This can be a child. This can be an aging parent. It does not matter. When they see that they've done a good job in something that actually helps in that home, it leads towards self-esteem. Now, let's talk about inside your business. You don't have to invent tasks for other people to do, but when you do have tasks and you have predictability in your schedule, you can ask people to do stuff. Now, you can't ask people to do stuff if you don't have a predictable schedule. So if your meal time's out of control and your menu planning's out of control, you can't ask anybody to do anything because everything's going to be sucked up in terms of how much you're going to, how everybody's going to eat, right? You can't do it. But if you have all those things under control, you can go to someone and ask them, hey, you know what? I've got a webinar I've got to do on Tuesday. Can you write up these slides for me? You can ask these things. Can you edit this book for me? You can ask people to do things when you've got predictability. In some cases, you're going to have to do some compensation, right? No problem, though, when you're making money. In other cases, you ought to just expect participation, right? You don't have to pay everybody for everything. Some cases, again, if they're in the house with you, they're reaping the benefits, then, part of this is just their contribution to what happens in that house, right? Now, the less you compensate them, the more that any rewards come to the business, you got to share with them. So let's say you don't give them, $8, $10, $20 an hour for their work. But when you start seeing, big bonuses, you start seeing big profits come in, you got to share it, right? You got to share it with them, right? You got to have big parties. You got to take them out to eat. You got to take them special places. You got to take those profits and you got to spoil the mess out of them, right? When those things are happening. So you can do it one of two ways. You can just compensate them. Or, in some cases, it's a life principle that, we work hard at stuff. We don't see the money right away. Everybody doesn't get paid right away. But when a big reward comes, you take some of that off the top and you plop it on them so that they can see the reward of what's happening right now. Every aspect of home management should be delegated to family members, right? You should not, now I'm not saying you don't do anything, but I'm saying every aspect of home management needs to be delegated. Right? Cleaning needs to be delegated. Somebody's got to be in charge of it. Somebody's got to be standing over it. Somebody's got to be accountable for it. Routine maintenance. Somebody's got to be accountable for it. In other words, maybe they can't fix everything, but somebody's got to be in charge of telling you when something's broken and something needs to get fixed, right? Somebody's got to be walking through that house to notice when something's broken or something's missing or something's out of whack. You've got to hold somebody accountable for that. Right? Somebody's got to be held accountable for meal preparation. It does not need to be you. You've got to hold somebody accountable to it. You've got to hold somebody accountable for laundry and making sure that area is what it should be. You've got to hold somebody accountable for menu planning. So in other words, everything that I explained to you about menu planning, hold somebody accountable to do that. Hold somebody accountable to errands that require driving. Now, if you've got kids that are driving age, you've got people in your house that can drive, any errands, right, that need to be done, you shouldn't be doing them, right? You shouldn't be doing them. And you need to hold people accountable to doing them. And again, I realize that this isn't going to be something that people want to do. And if you got a late start on asking people to do stuff, this is going to be a little difficult. But I guarantee you, If you will do this on a regular basis, you're going to see more profitability in your business. You're going to see more productivity in your home, and you're just going to see people be happier, and you're going to have people that have more self-esteem. Right? The more stuff people do and they get an attaboy, a pat on the back, or you correct them and show them how to do it better, you're going to see people a little happier about the work that gets done. Right? Now, these should not be tasks that you should feel obligated to undertake as long as there are people who can do it. Please do not do this stuff if you've got people that are capable of doing this stuff. Now, if you don't have people that are capable of taking on this stuff, naturally, you got to do it. But if you have people that are able-bodied, able-handed, able-fingered, whatever the case is, and they can do any of this list that I told you, put them in charge, hold them accountable, right? Especially if you've got a business you're trying to run in your home. Now, let's talk about supervision. The only way management is going to happen is if you don't do all the supervision, right? You got to have at least one individual that's going to be accountable to make sure the other individuals do the work. Now, sometimes it's going to be a little challenging if you don't have a lot of kids, but try to the best of your ability to use the resources you have to make sure you've got one person that's accountable, even if they got to watch over everybody else in order to get it done, right? They need to know what they've got to report to you, right? And they got to be even-handed in how you deal with the individuals. Now, you've got to have a really simple process of having somebody let you know if everything's not done, right? Simple. Not, you don't want people tattling on you. Make it simple and make it so that it doesn't look like people are telling on each other, right? That's not the idea. The idea is accountability. It's not telling on people, right? Please do not make this into a tattletale situation. Make it into an accountability issue, right? Somebody's accountable to you and the rest are accountable to that person, right? And whoever is the most dependable and capable, responsible individual in your home should be the one that you're going to assign these things to. Typically, it's going to be the oldest and the most lucid person that you have. And again, sometimes it's going to be an aging parent. But regardless of who it is, you've got to get these things off of your plate in terms of supervision. If you're supervising everything, handing a task over to somebody is not going to help you. But if you can have other people do the supervision, you are going to be in a good position. Now, the other thing is use a visible whiteboard. Now, this is going to sound a little weird. Right? Use a whiteboard, right? Use a whiteboard. Put that whiteboard in a central location so you communicate in advance everything on a particular day that's going to be expected. And you want to make this a big whiteboard, right? As big as you can be comfortable with. I'm not talking about a little bitty one that you sort of stick on your fridge or something that you stick on the wall. I'm talking about something big that you can put on an easel, right? Every day you ought to erase and restart with the new expectations. Right? Depending on the size of the board, you might want to start by creating morning expectations, erase it. When everybody comes in the evening, they ought to see new expectations. This is really your job more than anything else, right? So that so the people that you're having supervise everything else, they know what you expect, right? Your board ought to have your expectations for the day, where people are supposed to be, what's supposed to be done, right? It's going to help the individuals to know where you expect them to be. It's going to help them when you expect them to be there. It's going to help them. Basically, it's going to help them with their timing. The most important thing is going to be the timing. If you haven't figured this out, right? You've almost got to have. We're going to talk about this in a minute. You've almost got to have a system and a schedule on that board so that when everybody walks by it, they know, hey, you know what? It's 5:30. I think I'm supposed to be doing this. It's 7:30. I'm supposed to be doing homework right now. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. I'm supposed to be preparing the meal for the next day. Make sure that on your whiteboard, you've got your time expectations. Look, it doesn't matter if all you got in your house are grown folks, right? In fact, a whiteboard works amazingly well when you got grown folk, right? So basically, what this does is it saves you time from communicating your expectations over and over again. It also saves you time. It also saves you from getting on everybody's nerves. Because basically, if you're that person that's always reminding people, hey, did you do this one thing? Hey, did you do this one thing? Hey, I thought I asked you to do that. Hey, did you do that thing I asked you to do? Hey, when are you going to do that? Hey, you know what? It's 10 o'clock. Have you done this thing yet? When you put it on the whiteboard and you hold people accountable to watch the whiteboard, it saves you time and it saves you from getting on everybody's nerve. Right now, you should be holding people responsible to read that board on a daily basis. That's what you have to do. right? Don't hold people. Now, if you start getting into just holding people responsible for all little details that go on in the home every single day, you're going to go nuts and you're going to drive everybody else nuts. Hold people accountable to read that board. When people say, you know what, am I supposed to, what time is dinner supposed to, did you read the board? Hey, when are we supposed to be cooking, cooking on Thursday? Did you read the board? When's John supposed to be drawing out the map? Did you read the board? Hold people responsible to read the board daily, right? If your menu on that particular day is a certain item, you should be writing out the steps and the individual in charge of those steps, right? So in other words, if John is in charge of planning the menu or in charge of cooking on that day, his name needs to be on that board. You need to have the steps he needs to write out. He needs to be doing in the order at the time he needs to do them. Right? If individuals are expected to clean and maintain a certain area of the home, it should be communicated on that board. Any deviation, you need to make sure your schedule or theirs is communicated on the board. Right? See, again, if you're trying to, call people and text people and, they're in a different part of the house and you're trying to figure out, okay, you know what, how am I going to tell them how to do this? Well, it's written on the board. Something changes, you write it on that board because, again, every time they write on that board, you got to hold people accountable. When you walk by this board, need to be reading it, right? And somebody asks you something, you say, I wrote that on the board. You're responsible. You're accountable. This is your last line of defense to communicate your desires. Most people don't have a last line of defense other than nagging people. I mean, because if you don't communicate your expectations, that's what you are going to do. Now, this is why you have to continually expect that everybody read the board. Read the board, right? It's unavailable from their glance. It needs to be unavoidable from their glance. Now, last thing, right? Last thing, publish your schedule and your time expectations on the whiteboard. Publish your personal schedule. You need to publish your schedule. What do I mean by that? What makes the whiteboard time consuming every day is because you're going to detail the schedule you want people to see. This is going to be the most time-consuming part of everything you're doing. The most crucial part of all that has been communicated is the schedule. If you communicate when you expect things to be completed, it's possible to hold people accountable. If you don't have accountability, right? So if you just say, you know what, on Wednesday, you're in charge of dinner. What typically happens is nobody has a time demand on them. And so basically, people kind of get it done when they get it done, and it doesn't get done on time, and it doesn't get done so everybody can have it, and everybody's kind of up in the air and upset. Listen, you have got to make sure that there's a time expectation. You got to publish it to the board. I call it publishing. Every day you must publish. When you wake up in the morning, your job is to publish the morning schedule. That's your job. Your job. And you got to think through it. If you got to think through it the night before, when you write it out, publish the schedule. Now, if something has to be thawed for meal preparation for the next day, it should not only be a to-do item on the whiteboard, it should also be on the schedule with the individual responsible for it so they can see it. If it doesn't, you are not going to be holding anybody accountable, and you are going to have the same chaos you have all the time. If you publish a schedule and you publish the to-do list and you publish it according to the way you want it done and the individual that you're holding accountable to it, you can then go to that individual at 5:30 and say, hey, you know what? It's 5:30. Why are you playing video games? Hey, it's 5:30. Yeah, you know what? Hey, you know what? It's 5:30. I love the fact you're doing homework. I appreciate it. However, at 5:30, I really need you to be here doing this because we're all depending on you today. I've got things I've got to do. The rest of the people have got things they've got to do. We're depending on you to get the dinner done so that the schedule gets made, right? So again, holding people accountable, you've got to have a time, a thing, and a place. You don't have that, you can't publish. Now, this is the part of home management you cannot delegate, right? Unless there's a crisis, right? Now, if you got a crisis, somebody else has got to publish the schedule. But it does allow for predictability you can use to manage your projects for working for business, right? This is where you get predictability. What you're basically doing is bringing everything into the time and place where you want things to happen. And it's from this point you're going to manage the home. You are managing the home basically from the conception and the schedule that you write and the publish that you put together. It is the focal point of all your thought. You've got to put everything in terms of how you operate the systems into the schedule you publish. This is where you bring it all together, right? If you don't bring it all together into the schedule you publish, I promise you, all of these things, you'll think through them. You'll sort of get it right, but you got to have all the light switches turned up at the same time. And this is the thing that brings it together, is publishing the schedule. And you know you're doing it right when the people will know what to expect on certain days of the week, but they read your whiteboard anyway. They'll know it's Wednesday. They know what you're going to write up there, but you write it up there anyway. They look at the board because it's habit. They look at the board because that's their expectation. They look at the board because you're holding them accountable to it.